My boss laughed and called my son useless in front of 11 people, not in private, not under his breath, across a conference table with vendors, subcontractors, and 2 city inspectors sitting right there to hear it. My son Marcus had just sent over his bid estimate. He's 26, 3 years into commercial construction, earned every hour the hard way, done everything I asked him to do, and done it right. Gerald Moss, my business partner of 19 years, picked up that estimate, held it like it smelled bad, and laughed. Tell your boy to stay in his lane. This kind of work needs real professionals, not useless kids playing contractor. He didn't look at me when he said it. That's the part I kept replaying. He looked at the city inspectors, like he wanted them to know he was still the serious one. Like he wanted the whole room to remember I was the softer partner, the one with the son who didn't measure up. I didn't say anything. I picked up my coffee, but I didn't drink it. My hand wasn't steady enough. 11 people watched me do nothing. And Gerald turned the page and went back to the agenda like he hadn't just taken a shot at my son in front of the whole room. That night, I called Marcus. He picked up on the second ring. I told him I heard what happened. He said, "Don't worry about it, Dad. I'm fine. I've known that boy his whole life. I know exactly what fine costs him." There was a pause after he said it, a quiet one, the kind a father hears even when nobody else would. He wasn't fine. He was trying to make sure I didn't have to carry it with him. That made it worse. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table in Charlotte, not the nice one in the dining room, the breakfast nook table where I pay bills, look over numbers, and do my thinking when something doesn't sit right. I pulled a spiral notebook out of the junk drawer, bent wire, cheap paper, the kind of notebook you grab when you don't plan on writing anything important. I wrote the date at the top. Then I started writing everything down. Not just that day, everything. 19 years of everything. Gerald and I built that company over 19 years. Long enough for me to stop checking what I should have been checking. Long enough for him to think I never would. And somewhere along the way, Gerald forgot something important. I didn't need his permission to step back. I just needed a reason to stop protecting him. If you've ever sat in a room while someone used your child as the punchline, then you already know what that silence feels like. It doesn't end when the meeting ends. It follows you home. It sits down with you. It waits. The notebook filled fast. Dates, transfers, signature lines Gerald had rushed past me for years. Just a formality, Warren. Sign here. That night, I stopped taking his word for anything. For 19 years, I trusted him. He wanted distance after that meeting. Fine. He'd created it in front of city officials. I decided to use it. 3 days after that meeting, Gerald called twice. I let both go to voicemail. On the 4th day, he texted, "We should talk about the rezoning timeline. City's moving fast." I read it. Didn't respond. Instead, I called Thomas Abernathy at Abernathy & Cole on Providence Road. Thomas had done our incorporation paperwork back in 2006. He knew our operating agreement better than either of us ever did. I told Thomas to review everything. 2 days later, he called me back and said, "Sit down before you read this." So I did. Halfway through the packet, I found it. An amendment Gerald had filed 14 months earlier. It changed the balance of the company. My signature was on it. I never signed it. That was the first moment I understood this wasn't about one insult. The insult was just the thing that made me finally look. It gave the managing partner unilateral authority over vendor selections on active contracts. Gerald had named himself managing partner. I stared at that page for a long time. There's a strange feeling when 19 years of trust finally breaks. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens in layers. A page, a line, a signature. Then something cold settles into your chest and stays there. I called Thomas back. He said, "That's a forged signature, Warren, and it's not the only one." That was the moment the whole thing changed. I thought about calling Marcus right then. I didn't. Because once a son hears that kind of thing about his father, he doesn't forget it. And once a father sees why a man felt comfortable saying it, he doesn't either. I wrote down the page number, then the filing date, then the date Gerald laughed at my son across that conference table. 11 people in that room, 2 city inspectors, both scheduled to be at the rezoning hearing in 31 days. Gerald thought he was managing the timeline. What he didn't realize was that the timeline had already started moving against him. That same week, I stopped showing up to our Tuesday site walkthroughs. No call, no explanation. I just stopped giving him the comfort of my presence. Gerald texted, "Everything okay? Big walk tomorrow at the Brookshire parcel." I didn't answer. He showed up without me. 3 days later, the subcontractor called me directly, confused about a change order Gerald had approved on his own. Under our original agreement, both partners had to sign off. The original agreement, not the forged amendment. I told the subcontractor to hold the change order until both partners gave written authorization. Gerald called 4 minutes later. "What are you doing?" I said, "Following the agreement." Then I hung up. 3 years ago, I put Marcus on his first job site. I watched him learn in silence. Take correction without attitude. Stay late without being asked. Earn every inch of respect the slow way. So when Gerald called him useless, that wasn't just an insult. It was a lie spoken in public by a man who thought I'd keep protecting him anyway. Gerald left 3 voicemails the next morning. The first one was calm. "Warren, let's talk. We can work this out." The second one was tighter. "This is a critical window on the rezoning. I need you accessible." The third one finally sounded like the real Gerald. "You're being unreasonable. You want to blow up 19 years over a comment? Marcus needs thicker skin if he's going to be in this business." I wrote that one down word for word. Date, time, voicemail 3. Then I called Thomas Abernathy and told him to prepare the dissolution filing. Thomas said he'd already filed a fraud complaint with the North Carolina Secretary of State's office over the forged signature. Then he said, "This is bigger than a partnership dispute now, Warren. You need to be ready for what happens at that rezoning hearing." I said I'd be ready. I was. The hearing was downtown. Cold room, folding chairs, city people pretending this was just paperwork. Gerald walked in like it still belonged to him. He arrived with a consultant I didn't recognize and a presentation folder that looked more expensive than it needed to be. He shook hands with the inspectors, smiled at the planner, acted like it was still his room. He still didn't look at me when he sat down. Same as the conference table. Same mistake. The rezoning application was first on the agenda. Gerald's consultant started the presentation. 2 minutes in, the lead city planner raised her hand. "Before we continue, we've received a filing this week from the Secretary of State's office regarding disputed authority on this application, specifically the managing partner designation and the validity of certain signatures." The consultant stopped in the middle of a sentence. Gerald looked at the planner, then at the documents in her hand. Then, for the first time in 19 years, he looked directly at me. If you've ever sat across from someone that long and watched the exact second they realize the table has turned, you don't need me to decorate that moment for you. The planner set the papers down. "Mr. Moss, this application cannot proceed until the ownership dispute is resolved through the proper legal channels. This hearing is suspended." Nobody gasped, not out loud, but the room changed. The inspectors exchanged a look. The consultant leaned toward Gerald and whispered something. Gerald didn't answer. He just kept staring at the documents. 31 days of setup. 1 room, 11 minutes. Gerald caught up to me in the hallway afterward. He looked smaller than I remembered. That's the only word for it. Smaller. Like the room had been holding him upright, and now it was done with him. "Warren," he said, "what did you do?" I didn't answer that. He stepped closer. "You understand what this means for both of us." I said, "I understand exactly what it means." He stared at me for a second, then said the thing men like him always say when the facts corner them. "You're doing all this over a comment? Over Marcus?" That's when I finally looked at him properly. No anger left. I'd burned through that somewhere around page 9 of the notebook. Gerald, I said, you forged my signature on a legal document. That's not a comment. He opened his mouth, then closed it. And for the first time since that conference room, he sounded less like a partner and more like a man realizing he'd misread the only person still standing beside him. He looked past me once, toward the inspectors in the hallway, then back at me. That was the first time he sounded afraid of being seen small. Don't do this, he said. Then, lower, don't leave. There it was. Not pride, not authority, not even apology. Need. Need from a man who thought humiliation was free. I said the only true thing left to say. I didn't do this to you. I just stopped protecting you from it. He had nothing after that. Not a word, not an excuse, not even enough pride left to pretend he didn't understand. And the 2 city inspectors walking past us in that hallway heard every bit of it. Thomas filed the full dissolution the following Monday. 6 properties reverted to my sole ownership under the original LLC terms, the real ones, with my real signature. 3 weeks later, the rezoning application was refiled under Hale Properties LLC. It cleared on the first hearing. The $2.1 million in projected equity was mine. Marcus handled subcontractor coordination on the Brookshire parcel after that. Every site walk, every change order, every inspection sign-off. He did it right. He did it clean. Same useless kid Gerald laughed at in front of city officials. Those same 2 inspectors signed off on the final approvals. They'd been in both rooms. They'd seen the insult. Then they'd seen the answer. I never explained myself to Gerald. Not then, not later. The legal process explained plenty. The morning the dissolution finalized, I was back at the breakfast nook table with that same notebook beside me. It was full by then. Every page used, every date where it belonged. I poured coffee and sat there for a while, in the kind of quiet you only get after something rotten finally gives way. Gerald called my son useless in front of city inspectors. 72 hours later, he was asking me not to leave. I didn't leave. I just stopped standing where he could hide behind me.
So yeah, if you have ever been holding everything together, then you already know what this cost. So yeah, tell me what your thoughts are in the comment section. I will read everyone, and I will appreciate that. So yeah, see you in the next. Thank you.